We're so excited to be here, especially in light of all the incredible news that has happened. So it has happened, and it's happening fast. And we've got what I would consider the top expert in the entire country, and no one better to be able to get on the cutting edge of this news than Mr. Dan Pilla. Let's get the Pilla Tax Academy show started tonight. Dan, what in the world just happened, and how is it going to impact these millions of Americans?
Well, yeah, it's as you said, Jay, it's happening fast. And what happened is the president signed the what's called the Consolidated Appropriations Act, which was this massive bill to fund the government through the end of fiscal 2021, which is basically September of 2021. So this massive funding bill that keeps the government running. And as part of that funding bill was the additional provisions of law that deal specifically with tax issues, and more particular than that, deals specifically with the Paycheck Protection Program. And so that's what I want to talk about, Jay, because this bill has got literally hundreds of pages in it. And I've been pouring through these hundreds of pages over the last few days, and I haven't made my way all the way through yet, but I'm getting close to the end. Now, keep in mind, this bill is over 5,500 pages long.
You say 5,500 pages?
The House version of the bill was 5,500 pages long, and the portion of the bill that deals with the tax issues that we're talking about is several hundred pages, and I'm working my way through that systematically. So we've got a lot to talk about tonight. I've got myself up to speed on 5 or 6 of the 3 or 4, whatever it is, of the most critical aspects of this bill that our viewers want to learn about. Small business owners need to know about this stuff. We've been talking on the Pilla Tax Academy podcast here for the last 4 weeks, I think, Jay. Since we started this thing, we've been talking about the Paycheck Protection Program and the rules that the IRS has put forth on this program, and we need to straighten this out because there are changes, man. There's a lot of changes to this thing that are frankly, they're good news. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is good information. It's not good news for me because I got to spend so doggone much time pouring through this stuff.
It was so funny because when we started this, I said, Dan, okay, how are we going to address this? How big? He goes, everything we talked about? Well, let's just throw that out the door. Okay, let's get everybody out in here. I thought that was so crazy. I mean, so the HR 133, the Consolidated Appropriations Act signed by the president, you say in your note to me that it changes everything regarding PPP loans. So what's the most important changes then?
Well, the most important change, Jay, and this goes back to what we talked about last week. We talked last week about the question of whether expenses paid with Paycheck Protection Program money were tax deductible. And I talked about the 2 rulings that the IRS has issued. Now, there was a total of 3 of them, so one in July or August, and then 2 more in December, where the IRS specifically said you can't deduct expenses paid with Paycheck Protection Program money. That's no longer the law. One of the key provisions of this Consolidated Appropriations Act now very specifically allows the taxpayer, the business owner, to claim a deduction for expenses paid with PPP money. So all of the IRS's pontifications on this, Jay, that you and I have been talking about for the last 2 or 3 weeks are literally flushed down the tubes. They're gone. All right. Wow. So what our viewers need to know right now, Jay, is that all proceeds used to pay business expenses, all PPP proceeds used to pay business expenses can also be a tax deduction. Here's the key. You got to meet 2 rules. All right. And number 1, the expenses have to be ordinary and necessary to the success of your business. All right. So you must use the expenses for business purposes that are critical to the success of your business. That's the first thing. And the second thing is the expenses paid or the expenses claimed as a deduction must in fact have been paid. So it's not enough to just earmark money for the payment of these expenses. They have to in fact be paid. Now, here's one of the things that hit me over the head about this new law. You and I have been talking about the audit risk here, and I've been maintaining all along that you got to assume you're going to be audited. In the bill, Jay, which is now law, Congress has given the Internal Revenue Service very specific unquestioned authority to audit these Paycheck Protection Program loans and the uses to which the money was put. So you, as a small business owner, you have to take steps to make sure that you've got the records to prove how that money was used, that it qualifies under the Paycheck Protection Program as a legitimate expense, because it can only be used for certain areas. And you have to be able to prove that if your question, Jay, because they're going to look there. It's no longer speculative on my part. They've got the authority, as if they needed it. They've got the authority from Congress to very specifically and expressly look at those issues. And don't kid yourself, they're going to do it.
They're going to do it. And we know it's coming. So you guys are hearing it here first on the Pilla Tax Academy show. And Dan, I think we got to kind of get down into what can these PPP proceeds, what can they be used for?
Yeah, that's an important question, Jay, because that's been changed under the act as well. All right. So prior to the passage of this act, there were only 4 things you could use the money for. All right. Number 1 was payroll. 60% of the proceeds had to be used for payroll. Number 2 was interest on business loans, not principal, but interest. Number 3 was utility payments on business facilities. And the 4th thing you could use it on was rent or lease payments for business equipment or facilities. In the case of loan payments or utility payments or rent payments, this all had to be on contracts that were in existence before February 15th of 2020. All right, so it can't be new stuff that you acquired after February 15th of 2020. Has to be contracts that were existing as of that date. Now, here's what the Consolidated Appropriations Act did. It expanded considerably, Jay, how you can use the money. All right. For one thing, they added a proviso under the heading of payroll. All right. So not only is it wages and salary and compensation, but now under the addition that they stuck in the law, you can use the money for certain group insurance. All right. This includes group life insurance, disability, vision, and dental insurance for your employees. So if you're using the money for that employees insurance, group insurance through your business, that's a legitimate use of PPP money under the heading of payroll. Remember, 60% of the proceeds have to be used for payroll expenses. All right. Now they added other things to the list. All right. The other things to the list is you can pay for operations expenses. And we'll go back and define what these are once I run through the list here. You can use it for operations expenses. You can use for property damage. This one just slays me, but we're going to talk about what that is. You can also use it for supplier costs, and you can use it for worker protection expenses. All right. So those are the 5 areas that Congress added to PPP as to where the money can be used. All right. So now, if you want to get detailed about this, Jay, and I think we should,
yes,
we talk about what these various things are. So when we're talking about operations expenses,
okay, these
include any expenses for what you might call the bookkeeping type functions of the business. Right. The expenses necessary to keep that business operating from, let's say, a bookkeeping standpoint. And this is defined as business software or computing services or a product or service delivery services, processing and payments of bills and payments to your company. In other words, expenditures you pay out and money that you take in. So all the processing that goes along with that, the expenses that go along with that, fall under this operating expense category. The tracking of payroll expenses, so accounting, human resources, any expenses associated with maintaining your personnel. All of these things fall under the heading of operation expenses. Sales and billing functions, all right? These things fall under that heading. Accounting and tracking of supplies, inventory, records, and expenses. So this is very broad, as you can see. Very, very broad category of operating expenses can now be used with PPP money. But remember, this is very important. Even though they've expanded these areas, you still have to spend 60% of the money on payroll. All right. Now, what is property damage? I told you that I was a little surprised by this and frankly taken back by this a little bit. Property damages are defined as any cost related to property damage and vandalism or looting due to public disturbances that occurred in 2020. So if your business has suffered damage as a result of looting, rioting, all of this carrying on that has been going on across the country as a result of the civil unrest that started, frankly, in Minneapolis over Memorial Day weekend last May, all of that stuff now can be used, can be paid for with PPP money. So if your windows were broken, if your doors were kicked in, if your inventory was looted, the only proviso here, Jay, is that you can't be compensated by insurance, or if the insurance provided some compensation, then you can only use PPP money for the balance that wasn't covered by insurance. So the key here is to be able to demonstrate that your losses that you're paying with PPP money were not covered by insurance.
That makes great sense.
All right, so now let's talk about supplier costs. All right, this is another very, very broad category here of expenses that we can use the money for. All right, and this supplier expense is for goods that are essential to the operation of the business at the time the expenditure is made. All right, so supply, I mean, what are supplies, Jay? Whatever type of business you have is going to depend on or define what type of supplies you need to carry on that business. So right. What is essential to the operation of the business? That's what's in the language here. What's essential, Jay, to the operation of your business might not be essential to the operation of my business. So each individual business has the right to determine what expenses are ordinary and necessary, or in this case, essential, and which ones are not. The IRS doesn't get to decide, Jay, whether whether the expenditure for your business was necessary or not. You are the business owner. You're the entrepreneur. You're the one that's going out there trying to make something out of nothing. You're the one that's generating the income and trying to put your fingerprint on the world here with whatever your business is. You get to decide what's important. The IRS does not. Now, the other proviso here is that these expenditures have to be made in connection with a contract or a purchase order that was in effect at any time during the covered period of a PPP loan. Now, the covered period is something we have to talk about too, because this has been changing a lot as well. Okay. But generally speaking, Jay, the covered period is the period of time from the time the loan was funded and plus 24 weeks. All right, I'm simplifying it here for purposes of this little discussion because we're going to get a little bit more detailed as we go on here. But think of the covered period as the time the loan is starting with the date the loan is funded and then continuing for 24 weeks. So these expenses for supplier costs have to be paid, have to be used for contracts that were in effect during that period of time. All right, so or they could be based on contracts that existed before you got the loan, but were for goods or services delivered during the period of time that you had the loan, all right? So those are the supplier costs. Now, worker protection costs, that's the fourth area. That's the fourth thing that was added here under the Paycheck Protection Program, and this is very, very, very broad. Worker protection costs include any operating expense or capital improvement that you make to your business facilities that are necessary to comply with any federal, state, or local government or recommendation from the CDC to keep your workers or your customers or clients or patients safe. All right, so this is very broad. This can be face masks and rubber gloves, for example, for your employees, or it can be the sneeze guards and these plexiglass dividers and protectors that we see in every store we go in now. Has got these plastic dividers between the checkout counter, the checkout person at the cash register, and the customer in line. You see these stickers on the floor everywhere that say maintain 6 feet of social distancing, right? They're pasted all over the floors of every store you go into. You see signs on the doors that tell you to wear masks. You see giant signs that tell you to maintain social distancing. These signs, Jay, aren't free.
Correct.
I mean, there's businesses have spent a ton of money on this stuff. All right. And now Paycheck Protection Program funds can be used for all of that stuff, but it doesn't stop there. All right. The list goes on. If you had to install, for example, some kind of a drive-through facility in your business, a lot of the grocery stores we see now have set up drive-through situations where people can either order online or they can call up on the phone and order what they need, and then the store will bring it out to them, and they've got specific designated drive-through areas that they've set up. This is an expense, and these the expenses can be used, can be paid with PPP money. If you installed some kind of a fresh air ventilation system into your facility, all right, to circulate air properly and to filter air properly, so as to keep the air fresh and clean, right? We've seen that a lot of places with bars and restaurants that have installed these filtration systems. These things cost a fortune, Jay, and ordinarily these are capital expenses that can't be written off. They have to be capitalized and depreciated over time. But you can use PPP money to pay for those expenditures. All right, so now, how many restaurants have you seen, Jay, that have set up outdoor spaces with tents or temporary structures of some kind to continue to do business? All right, during the summer in Minnesota, all over Stillwater, the small town here that's on the border between Minnesota and Wisconsin that my office is located in, restaurants all over town spent a fortune, Jay, to set up outside dining so they could continue to operate as long as they had outside dining. Well, they had chairs and they had tables and they, on and on with fences and dividers and traffic protection devices. I mean, it just goes on and on with the expense. And now those things can be paid for with PPP money as well. Anything needed, any asset that you had to purchase to comply with a government order, federal, state, or local, or a CDC recommendation falls under this category. All right, I talked about face shields and masks and gloves and respirators. All of that stuff is included. And any other kind of personal protection equipment that's required or recommended, required or recommended. Doesn't have to be a directive from the government. It can be a recommendation from the CDC or from your state health department. We think you should do this. That's good enough to fall under this heading of personal protective equipment. And Jay, this is a long, expensive list of stuff that people are spending money on, and so it's very important that people keep this in mind now, because, as I said, these PPP proceeds can be used to pay for all that. Now, there's a proviso here, Jay. Unless you want to interrupt with a question, I heard you.
No. I think that this is getting so much value that I don't get into it, because I think our listeners are just some immense amount of value here.
Good. Well, listen now. Here's an important proviso where you can't use PPP money. You cannot use PPP money in connection with any expenditure made with respect to your personal residence. So even if you've got an office in your home, Jay, and you use money to improve, I'm talking about the structure now. I'm not talking about equipment. I'm talking about the structure.
Okay.
So let's say you want to put up a wall, or you want to put in a door, or you want to knock out a wall. Those are improvements to residential real estate, and you cannot use PPP money for that. However, if you've got an office in your home and you need to install personal protection equipment of some kind because of a state or local or federal, for that matter, government directive or a CDC recommendation or a state health department recommendation, you can use it for that purposes. What we're talking about here, the exclusion is to the structure itself, residential real estate structure itself. That's what we can't use the money for. All right, so that is an important thing. Now, here's another thing. Let me make another point, and then we can go on from here. This was made retroactive, Jay. I hate retroactive laws. I especially hate retroactive tax laws, especially when the retroactive tax laws are tax increases that are made retroactively, which happens all the time, by the way. But this law is retroactive, meaning that these now 8 different categories. Now, we went from 4 categories to 8. Now, under the new law, these 4 new categories apply as if they were in the law when the CARES Act was passed back in March of 2020. So all of this money can be used in these 4 categories. Now, here's what the practical problem for that is. Tax pros like myself have been pounding on people. I know I have. I've been pounding on people for the last 9 months to be very, very careful how you use your PPP proceeds so you qualify for discharge. And I've been right up until last week, Jay, I was hammering on people not to use the money in areas that are not authorized by law. So if you've already blown through your stash of PPP money, and you used it only in those initial 4 areas that the law qualified for, well, guess what? The ship has sailed on you as far as these new 4 categories are concerned, because you got no PPP money left. But I know there's people out there that are still sitting on PPP money. I know there is. And so it's important for you to understand that now you've got 4 other areas, 4 additional areas that you can use this money and still qualify for loan discharge under the program.
This is great. Great information. Dan, this is a question that's been coming in. I'm wondering, many people are wondering, can you clarify, did the law continue the PPP program? So is it now, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. It not only did it, first of all, 2 things that happened with it. All right, 2 things that happened with it. Number one is they added more money into the PPP program, and they added a new deadline for applying for PPP loans. So if you haven't gotten a PPP loan yet, and your business needs one, the door has been opened up for you again. The Congress added almost $500 billion to the pot of money that's available for PPP loans going forward. The new deadline right now, and Jay, this could change next week. Right? This could change next week, and probably will, because there's more legislation in front of Congress right now that's working its way through, and who knows what that's going to come out like. But the deadline now is March 31st of 2021. So there's another pot of $500 billion that's available that you can use to get a paycheck protection program.
Dan, did the first pot all get used up, or is that going on top here?
Yeah. Well, the first pot basically was used up, Jay. That money was essentially gone, and as I said, now another almost $500 billion, almost $500 billion was added. I didn't add it up all the way. Anyway, the point is, there's almost $500 billion there available now through March. But now there's another thing, Jay. There's also a supplemental. There's a supplemental PPP loan program.
Okay.
Right. So even if you're only allowed 1 PPP loan. This is important to understand. You can't, if you already got a loan, you can't go back and get another new second loan.
Okay.
But there's a supplemental loan. Now, we're not going to get into the supplemental loan tonight, Jay.
Okay.
But there is a supplemental PPP loan program that we're working our way through as far as exactly how that works. We'll have more information on that for the viewers as we go forward here. So if you got a small business and you're not sure how this PPP stuff works, for heaven's sakes, you got to stay tuned to our Pilla Tax Academy podcast here, because I'm going to be going through this stuff, Jay. And remember now, Jay, and I mentioned this last time as well, we're talking about this stuff at kind of a 5,000-foot level here. But the reports and the analysis that I put out, the written special reports and research reports that I put out as part of the Pilla Tax Academy, goes into great detail with this stuff. It's not a 5,000-foot view when we go through these detailed research reports that I write and publish. In those reports, you have all of the hard information you need to put this information into practice. It's one thing to have a basic knowledge of this stuff. It's another thing to be able to put it into practice and to work with your tax pro to get this stuff into practice. And that's why it's so important to be dialed into the research material that we produce here as part of the Pilla Tax Academy.
This is great. So listen, speaking of that, guys, ladies and gentlemen, get over to PillaTaxAcademy.com. We've got what just was released to the folks that were at the tax defense conference that Dan did back recently in October. That was just, so the platform is now going live. You can still get a discount. If you're a tax pro and you're listening to this, you can get a discount of about $200 off of that training that comes with 12 continuing education credits. So go to PillaTaxAcademy.com and order the Tax Defense Live, to where you can get dialed in how to properly represent your clients. Then we've got this is what I think is critical, because there's about 50 million of these folks out there that are small business owners. So we've got the Business Mastery course that Dan Pilla has poured hours into, where he teaches you all the strategies on business tax mastery. And then we've got the Taxpayer Rights Mastery course. That's the everyday taxpayer that we didn't get taught grades 1 through 12, went to college. No one really got taught how the tax code works. You can go to PillaTaxAcademy.com, pre-order those. Those are going to be available within the next 10 days. And so you can still save money before those go live, and then you can get your hands on that. Now, Dan, this is big right here because I want to make sure that people are clear on this. They've got a business. Is there a maximum amount of employees that's involved? What's involved with the simple loan, forgiveness process? Let's capture those two things as we wrap up here.
Yeah, the Paycheck Protection Program, now the supplemental program is available for businesses with 300 or fewer employees, and the maximum loan available under the program now, Jay, is $2 million. This is a remarkable change from the initial program. The initial program was up to 500 employees and $10 million. Now we're 300 employees and $2 million. All right. And there's a simplified procedure if your business, if your loan is under the loan now, not your business revenue, but the loan is under $2 million, is under $150,000. So yeah, this is a critical aspect of this thing as well. Now, one more thing I want to touch on, Jay, before we wrap up, and that is the so-called covered period under the law. What I mean by that is the period of time in which the money has to be used. Last week, I was pounding on our viewers to tell them to make sure they got the money spent by December 31st, because that was the deadline for spending PPP proceeds under the old law. Okay. That's not the case anymore, Jay. That December 31st deadline is gone. So if you haven't spent your PPP money by now, don't panic.
There you go.
Because now the way the covered period works is you've got 24 weeks from the date your loan was funded in which to spend that money in once. You actually can make an option, Jay. You can make a choice. You can spend it within 8 weeks of the funding period or funding date, or you can spend it within 24 weeks of the funding date. It's your option as the business owner. So if your loan was funded, and let's say your loan was funded 20 weeks ago, well, here we are at December 30th today. You don't have to spend your money by tomorrow. Right. You've got more weeks available to you, 24 weeks being the key, to spend that money. So you don't have to spend in a panic here now that we're at the end of the year. So that's an important thing for people to take away from this session tonight, is that December 31st deadline is now gone.
Beautiful, beautiful. Got a question here from Kimberly Jackson Shelton. She says, if you're a business that has already received a PPP loan, you cannot apply for a second loan when they start taking applications again in January?
There's the process for a supplemental loan, but you can't get a second loan. And we're going to go through what the supplemental loan process looks like, Jay, in upcoming sessions of the Pilla Tax Academy podcast here. We're not going to get into that tonight. But generally speaking, the rule is one loan, not two loans.
Got it. Great question. And guys, look, this show is so valuable. We'll be back here next Wednesday, maybe Thursday, but I'm pretty sure it'll be next Wednesday. We'll post that. Make sure you go over to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Pilla Tax Academy, and make sure you hit follow. That way you get notifications. Also, if you want to get us on YouTube, get over to PillaTube, PillaTube. Get over to PillaTube.com and subscribe. That's important. That way you got YouTube you can share. This information is so important all the way around. This is valuable for everyone that appreciates Dan and him bringing his information for free tonight. I want you to please just do us a favor. Just post a comment that you appreciate this information. Post a comment. We would love it if you would share it with other business owners, share some love with other folks to get this free information. This is all about exposure of this powerhouse Pilla Tax Academy platform that you will watch over the next 12 months really become the number one, in our opinion, the number one source for all things taxes in the next 24 months. Everybody hit the thank yous, post the comments. Dan, thank you for taking the time tonight. It's always a pleasure. It's always awesome. We know you're about to be busy with your hands in the books because I know you and your brain. He will peel this apart. You will get this peeled apart by the next show. Thank you, Dan. Any closing words, Dan?
All right, Jay, God bless you. Final words, there's no such thing as a hopeless tax case, Jay. I don't care what kind of a tax problem you have. I don't care how long you've had it. I don't care what you've done to try to fix it. I don't care who's told you you can't fix it. There's always a way to solve your problem. So don't suffer with tax problems. We can work you through it.
And by the way, last thing, guys, there's the $100 Amazon gift card giveaway. There's a contest over on our Facebook page, Pilla Tax Academy, facebook.com/Pilla Tax Academy. Scroll down, you'll see the $100 Amazon gift card giveaway. That ends tomorrow. So from today and tomorrow, some people are very close to winning that. All you got to do is be sharing and going through the process, and you can pick up points to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Appreciate everyone. Dan, have a great night. To our viewers, appreciate
Happy New Year, everybody. Good to see you.
Take care, everybody.